children. If elected, you will be chairperson of the school committee. What are your ideas to improve attendance at all grade levels?
And I think that that's also a home issue, right? It's very important that families, parents at home really play a role in their child's life in Fall River. So we have to make sure that parents have resources, and that's why I have been a huge supporter, and we continue to support our Parents Learning Center through the school department. That's one way to encourage families to make sure that they have the resources they need at home to make sure their children show up to school or in class. Another important thing is to make sure that our students feel loved within the classroom. Make sure that they feel that they are valued. That's so important to.
I mentioned briefly before about being a principal in New Bedford of an alternative school. One of the first problems that we had there was kids didn't show up. We had 50% attendance on a daily basis. I was put in to fix the problem, correct it, think about new solutions on how to make kids feel good, how do they get engaged in school. Kids show up when they're engaged. The first thing we did was develop 2 programs, not 1. Make sure that our kids who had behavioral issues were not the ones that were sitting next to our kids who were struggling with social emotional issues. They didn't mix. They never did. We separated that class. We turned around and said, we need them to be in separate buildings. We need to give them skills that make them happy every day to come to school. To someone who just said it, it might have been the mayor, that they need to be loved. At the end of the day, I knew my kids were loved because we had a culinary department in our school. We were lucky for the facility that we had. We made sure that our kids had skills, but also that we utilized their skills to make dinners for the parents so the parents would come in as well, to make sure that they got involved, to make sure that our attendance was going to go up. This was a good group of people that came together to make sure that kids came first. In that opportunity, if you go back and look at those days in my second year and third year and fourth year of principal, over 90% attendance at the schools. Unheard of, 40% increase in attendance. But it was because we loved kids and made sure they were engaged every day and make sure they were learning something that meant to them, and they were going to take that education and get back to a regular public school setting where they get their diploma.
When school districts fail, they don't only fail individual students, they fail the entire community. And it's also clear that high-quality educational opportunities have to be a reality for low-income children, children with disabilities, English language learners, and children of color, who comprise about 50% of our public school district. That's why some concrete solutions that I have for addressing absenteeism include providing universal breakfast. So what does that mean? That means you have kids who may be coming to school with hungry bellies. There may be a kid who has to get themselves out of bed, get their siblings ready for school, maybe because mom and dad are hooked on opioids or dad is incarcerated. And when those kids get to school, if they're hungry, are they really ready to learn? If they're late because they were trying to get food, are they ready to learn? The second way that I want to address this is by not encouraging court involvement for absenteeism. There's something called a school-to-prison pipeline that perpetuates intergenerational cycles of poverty and incarceration in our city. There's no reason that we have to refer these kids to court.
Thank you.
When I used to take my daughter Brianna to school at the Custer Middle School, I would stop along the way and pick up 2 other students that didn't have a way to get to school. Those 2 students became number 1 and number 2 at Durfee High School when they graduated. We don't know what these kids are going home to. We don't know what happens when they wake up in the morning. We don't know what they have to eat before they go to bed at night. There are so many problems out there. The reason I would go to pick up these 2 students is because they had 1 car in the family, and the father had to give the mother a ride to work and then go to work himself, and he didn't have the time to take his children to school. So there are a lot of issues out there. I've also remember when I would see kids waiting for the bus, and it's raining out, and the bus stop had no shelter, and these kids would be soaking wet. They didn't have an umbrella, they couldn't afford one. They'd be soaking wet, and I could see the kids walking back home because they're not going to go to school soaking wet. What are they going to do? And I've had teachers tell me that some of the kids would go to school where there was water dripping on the floor because they were soaking wet in the first period.
Chronic truants go to court, I think it's still a $25 fine. I don't want them fined. I want parents to go to classes where they find out how important school attendance is to try to flip the switch. We'd get kids coming into Durfee, they'd roll up on us with 300-400 days absent from their first 8 years of school. Those students need additional supports, which, as the mayor said, are going to be in the next year's budget. There are other things we can do. Encourage after-school activities. Those kids seem to come and stay longer. We can push the students in the classrooms. When they're getting the proper instruction, they're more likely to attend. But these long-term, hardcore, chronic students need a lot